You can smile meanwhile.
Right.
Amit, didn't you volunteer to put on like a song and dance show as the preamble?
If you are up for it. All right.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
yeah, cool. So the session will be recorded. All I would request uh, you guys. I think we'll just have a few attendees coming in. Wait for a moment. Uh, so things getting any better in New York, Aseem, in Stanford?
Stanford was out of the sort of like nuclear zone. So it was relatively better than, I have one employee that's in downtown Manhattan that was there throughout, and he was the only person that was on site at the customer's entire facility. Nobody else was there. And he was living in an apartment around the corner. So, compared to him, hey, I got an isolated house out in the suburbs. It's like, if I don't feel like stepping out and seeing anybody for a week, a month, or a year, it's, everything can be delivered and you don't necessarily have to step out. But I mean, they've relaxed most of the restrictions in the Connecticut area. Restaurants are open. You can do outdoor dining. You can do, if you are willing to freeze, you can do indoor dining. So, you have a variety of options now. And our area overall in the US has remained, after the initial massive spike, has remained relatively low, which is kind of nice.
That's nice. That's good to hear. Some good news.
Yeah. So yeah, but I miss the travel too, like Maria does. It's like, and yeah, my family is would be very happy, I think, if I was to, just go do my business stuff for a while.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right?
There you go. Exactly.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Cool. So let me start. I'll begin introducing Maria, the woman on the panel. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you very much. I have everything about you. But before we start, I'm going to request you guys for your hand and for your leg, basically a mobile phone. If you can keep it away, I'll have your 100% attention, and people who are watching us will also have 100% attention, and that will make a lot of sense. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Over to Maria. Maria, thank you very much for coming over. So Maria is a CEO of Seven Generation Games. She was a journalist in her early career. She did her journalism course from New York University. She also taught journalism in Emerson College. That was completely different from what she's doing right now. She also worked in Fox News. I think Fox News is Trump's favorite channel.
Oh, Fox News Latino. It's a different one, but yeah.
It's a different one. Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying. Wonderful. And then her first venture was a company called Every Bit. In Every Bit, they were making apps and videos of live reporting events, and the app was also used for multimedia storytelling. There were two-member team in Every Bit, and they could raise a funding of $300,000. We're going to talk about that as angel investment. Uh, Maria is also the author of a book called Your Fight, My Fight. And this book was in the New York Times best-selling for almost forever in 2016. It was on the shelf for 1 year, one goddamn year. It was as the New York best-selling book. It was also a Toronto Star. It was also in Sunday Times best-selling. It was also a sports book of the year in the UK. It was also the book of the year for sports in 2016 in the UK. I would like to read the book, Maria. I got all the information today. I will grab a copy of the book and for sure I read it. Maria was also invited to White House for speaking in 2016 on a Women's Summit. I'm sure you're making your country proud, Maria. Maria is now working in a company called Seven Generation Games. She founded the company as a CEO, and she's the CEO of the company. Seven Generation Games makes educational software, video games, and apps, primarily focusing on educating people, because I think that's something which which people can use. Education is something people can use. Maria, thank you so much. Thank you very much. You have vast experience from journalism to software companies to writing a book. We can definitely learn from you. Thank you very much for coming over this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Over to Aseem. Aseem is the CEO of Webomates currently and founder of Webomates. Aseem did his engineering from Mysore, India. Then he went to the US. He did his master's in computer science. He is also an MBA from Stern School of Business. I did not know, Aseem, you were so qualified. Aseem worked in Philips before and many software companies, and then Webomates is his second venture as an entrepreneur. Webomates is primarily building AI software for testing. His clients include Priceline, US Navy, and he has filed a lot of patent applications to protect the testing area, the software testing area, and he's doing fabulous. He's also our client. We're happy to be working with him for many years. Thank you so much, Aseem, for coming over this morning.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Jayendra. Jayendra is again a highly qualified guy. He is a master's in biotech from India. It is his PhD in computational biology from Paris. He's also did his fellow research from Stanford University. He is a founder of a company called Crosscope. And Crosscope is primarily in the business of detecting cancer and other diseases at an early stage. Thank you so much, panel, for coming this morning, this afternoon, this evening. Question to Maria. Maria, you guys were two people in every bit. Yeah. You secured a funding of 300K from an angel investor. How did you pull it off?
Well, I think the big thing is you have to, one, build out your network, right? So it's easy to say, we got 300,000. There was a lot of people that weren't interested. And so I think that's part of it is like the end result always sounds good, but there's, the picture, the part that people don't see, which is a lot of people saying, I'm not interested. I don't see that. I don't think that's going to work. So I think it's about largely selling your vision and explaining to someone, here's what we see the need is. And with every bit, both of us, it was a multimedia storytelling app for journalism. So we came into it with extensive journalism backgrounds. And so I think having that qualification and the understanding of the market and all of those things is really, really important, because sometimes people see problems that should be fixed, but if you don't have the skills or the background to fix them, you're maybe not the person to do it. And so I think that was a big part of it, was we really had, the credentials to tackle something in the space, and we didn't necessarily have the experience in building a company, which as you get into that is a whole different thing. But I think that was part of it, is selling what we saw as the need, and us as the ability, us as the team to be able to build that out. And then asking a lot of people until some said yes. And then I think journalism is a perfect background for fundraising, I talk about, because in journalism, you're taught to basically go ask random people things. And a lot of times, especially depending on what you're covering, they don't want to talk to you and they say no, and you can't take that personally. And so as we went into fundraising, that was really, really helpful, because a lot of people tell you no, but not to take it personal. And so I had, even though journalism didn't seem like a background training for startups, it really served us well, I think.
Excellent. So what Maria is saying on fundraising is this, guys: be thick-skinned, do not mind, don't let your ego get hurt, keep hustling, keep talking to people. You will get some no's, but finally you'll get a yes. You got to be a hustler. You got to never stop. Excellent piece of advice. Thank you so much, Maria. Yeah. Maria, from journalism to every bit to 7th generation games, why are you into gaming business? Like, what's your why?
Yeah, well, I think our games focus specifically on closing the math gap, and we work in communities that a lot of typical software companies are overlooking. So things where everything doesn't work in the cloud because you don't have good connectivity, or you have low-end hardware. And so for us, we thought, how do we reach kids who a lot of solutions aren't being created for. So that's where we started, and looking at not just overcoming technological barriers to implementation, because that's the kind of problem that if you're good at software development, which my co-founders are, I don't take the credit for that, but if you're good at software development, you can come up with ways to fix those things. But the real question was, when you look at a problem like education and you look at kids who are underperforming, how can you get those kids engaged? How can you bring them up? And I think about video games all the time, and how many times do kids or adults, right, play a video game over and over and over again to get incrementally better? You know, there's no way, I always talk about Tetris, there's no way to win. You just play again and again and again until you die, and then you go and you play again to just get a little bit better every time. And that's really what education is, right? And we always, there's no one I know that tackled something in school the first time and got it and didn't fail. And gaming kind of takes that fear of failing away, because you're supposed to. And so we saw that as a perfect vehicle for getting into education and for getting kids engaged that maybe weren't feeling connected to by other kind of classroom solutions or opportunities. And so, yeah, we figured, instead of trying to recreate the wheel and find a way to pull kids in, let's go where they already are and then add education into that.
Fabulous, fabulous. Great technique, great strategy. Thank you so much, Maria, for covering that up. Over to you, Aseem. So Aseem, you're currently funded?
Nope.
Is that by design or by default?
Design. I went out to raise funding a couple of times, got a few term sheets, and didn't like the valuation. We've been in money for a fair while at this point in time, and there's something called a chasm. So either you raise really early and give a bucket load of equity, or you start running into people, particularly when you start talking Series A, and they'll start talking about valuations that are multiple of revenue. And most of the time when you're in the chasm, it doesn't make sense because you're losing equity at the seed level, whereas you're already an operational business that is in, you know, cash flow is happening, et cetera. And so you basically continue to grow. So one of the reasons we pivoted to the DoD last year is that's an excellent way to, at least in the US, get various ways of investments. SBA loans are a great idea too. And this was my second go around. The term sheet that we got in the first one was, the equity deal was probably not one I would do again. So, you know, it makes a difference what you want to do, where you want to go. And, you know, we chose at the beginning to actually self-fund at what would have been the seed round.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You spoke about valuation is a factor of your MRR or ARR. For a software company like yours in the US, what's the X factor? If your ARR is, let's say, X, what valuation are people looking at in the US at the moment for deep tech company like yours?
I think this is where you start getting into how well you know the investor, and how desperate you are for money. And your valuation is a variable range that can range from, I've known people to take 3x their valuation, their MRR, ARR actually, as the valuation. And you hear, you know, these miracle stories of companies in Silicon Valley that get 20x or even higher. It's, you know, there's a lot more factors that come into play. What's your current growth rate, right? So has your ARR or your MRR, is it growing at 10%, 20%, 30%, 200%? Growing at 200%, you know, you can realistically start looking at a valuation that's significantly higher. You're growing at 30%, meh, you know, you're not going to get that great valuation. And so, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of factors, and it's the one variable that you're going to get even after you meet a bunch of investors that are interested in investing. You're going to spend a lot of time sort of like thinking through that and deciding whether you actually want to take the money. Of course, many startups founders are in a position where they just have to take the money. So that's a choice you make, right?
Wow, wonderful. Yes. Yes. So what we learned from Aseem is this: you must take money. If you have to take it, you have to take it, right? But a big factor in your valuation is your growth rate. depending upon you're growing 10x or 20x or 30x month by month or year by year. That's a big factor in your valuation. Also, network that you create for yourself, the people that you're meeting, in how much are you desperate for money, or can you survive for some time? Those are also certain factors which determine your valuation, and not just your monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue. Great. Thank you so much, Aseem, for saying that and for touching upon that. Over to you, Jayendra. Why did you choose cancer uh, as your area of research? Why this? What's your why? Why you're doing what you're doing?
Sure. So the inspiration to be involved in cancer research in my previous roles as a scientist, as well as now starting a venture, comes from concern that a proper oncology solution would not only bring the families of cancer patients some relief, but also open up a path to future fight against this deadly disease. That's why I've been super involved in cancer research, and now trying to build solutions which we've experienced that there is an unmet clinical need, and a solution technology could definitely bridge some of those gaps. And that was one of the reasons that we started CrossScope.
Mm-hmm. So, how's the journey so far?
Yeah, so call myself an academic entrepreneur, unlike these distinguished fellow panelists who have a vast range of entrepreneurial experience. I'm a first-time founder. I spent the last decade or so in research, and learned from the fellow clinicians and data scientists that there could be a possibility, particularly in cancer diagnostics, that could be solved by our digital solution. And we're fairly a young company. We started off last year, sometime October. And now, as a medical software AI company, the path to commercialization is a bit complicated, and like other commercial technologies, we have a lot of hurdles in terms of regulations and compliance, data security to establish. These are all capital heavy, resource heavy directions to achieve. And currently, although we have made some headways in the technology we've built, we've established some early collaborations and gotten to a point that we could, although use our technology for research use only and get some early revenue. So we started the company as a completely bootstrapped direction. And now with our early revenue, we could direct it towards the company's growth, bringing in new talent, as well as establish more collaborations for our research.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much, Jayendra. Jayendra, you have done your bachelor's in biology, then master's, then you did your PhD in computational biology, then you did your fellow researchship in Stanford, and then you started your first venture. And then there are guys who are college dropouts, school dropouts, and they just jump into it. What's your take on that?
Sure. So again, as a medical AI company, medical software company, there needs to be a certain level of expertise that you'll have to achieve before jumping into healthcare directions. It's not a very straightforward path unless and until you have some familiarity with the vertical you're working with, or you have colleagues who have heavy experience in the field. Unlike those things, we don't see that often that college dropouts start up a heavy, deep tech medical company. And that is one reason that I think domain knowledge is quite important when you deal with patient lives eventually.
Yes, absolutely. Makes sense. Thank you so much. Makes sense. Maria, are you guys funded?
We are. So we had investor, so we've had an angel round, and then also we've been largely funded by, in the US, we have what are called SBIR awards, so Small Business and Innovation Awards, from different US federal agencies. So we've had those from US Department of Agriculture, National Institutes of Health, and National Science Foundation. Excellent.
How do you choose your investors? Do you go after everybody who has money?
No, I very carefully. I think in the beginning, you think you should just go after everybody that has money, right? And then I think it really, especially we're working in education. And so education's similar in some ways to healthcare. It takes a long time, right? And if it's not like if I'm, say buying a pair of yoga pants and they don't work, oh well, right? It's if I use this solution in a classroom for 10 hours in front of a kid who's already underperforming and it fails, I've stolen that time from a kid who needs it more than anyone, right? And so I've taken that opportunity, 10 hours of say third or fourth grade math, they'll never get back, right? And so one, I couldn't live with that on just a day-to-day life standpoint, but also schools can't use that. They're not going to take risks. They're really slow to take risks. They want lots of efficacy. They want all those things. And they're very slow to buy. So for us, I think when we've looked at investors, we've been really clear on, and this is probably a terrible thing to say, but especially early on, I say to our investors, like, don't give me this money if you can't lose it, right? And that's probably a bad thing to say, but then I don't have to worry about them coming back to me, repeatedly. You hear these stories about every couple weeks, or a couple months, they're checking in, what's going on? How's this happening? And so I really pick our investors very, carefully. And I think, I ask them, are you interested in education? Do you understand the space? So we have some folks who really are really interested in social impact, and they're really interested in education, and they really want to give us, good counsel and mentoring. And then we have a couple of folks who are like, you know what, I like your team, I like what you're doing, here's your money. Just don't, just let me know if I have more money at the end, right? And so we've really been careful on picking those kind of folks instead of just saying, hey, here's our numbers, or especially when you have growth and things like we've had 50% growth the last couple months just because everything going online and school and we've been well positioned. But I think you sometimes get a little bit overexcited, like, great, now I can go get some of these people that maybe wouldn't have looked at me before. But for us, we really sit back and think, wait, who are the people that we want long-term involved with this company, and do their visions align with ours? And there's been times where we've met with people and we thought, the money would be nice, but we don't know if we want this person involved with us long term. And so we've kind of said, oh, well, we think we're going to hold off, or things like that. So it can be hard, like Aseem was saying, to leave money on the table. But at the same time, you think about, do I want to have to deal with this person all of the time? And part of it is, if you have money in the bank, a little bit, it gives you some flexibility. But yeah, we really, it's funny, I talk about, it's kind of like dating, right? And I thought I'd get married and I wouldn't have to date anymore, but it's a lot of like that, like, is this a fit? Do you like me? Do I like you? Where do we see this going? And we've been really lucky. The investors we have are, I think because of that process, 100% on board with what we do and supportive of what we're doing.
Excellent. So guys, don't just get money from anybody. You can date anybody, but you can't marry anybody. So getting investment is like marrying somebody, because they're going to be with you for a while. So it's important to choose them, and they should also choose you. Your visions must align. That's the learning from Maria. Excellent. Top 3 questions, Maria, that investors ask you.
So I think one, so beyond just kind of some of the metrics, or you're looking at the metric things as well?
Otherwise.
Sorry. So I think one big thing they ask is, what's your vision, right? What do you see as, what do you hope to accomplish, right? Do you think you're going to be in every school? Do you think, so having a vision, and I think it's really, on one hand, we've learned as we've gone through, don't be huge, right? Don't say we're going to be in every school. Because one, I don't even believe that, right? Like, there's no solution that's in every single school. So having a realistic vision, and I think part of that question isn't just to see where you're going, but it's to see if you really understand the market, right? If I said we're going to be in 90% of US schools in 2 years, an investor should walk away, because that's not realistic. So I think they look at where you see you're going. They ask, what's your exit strategy? And that's a big one. And again, that's kind of a thing, some companies, it's IPO, but for a lot of companies, it's an acquisition, right? Ed tech is a lot of acquisitions. So they say, what is your exit strategy? And again, I think one, they want to know that you have an exit strategy, or you have thought about that, but two, they want to see if you understand what that's going to be, and what that should look like for your industry. So I'd say, those are two. One that I really like, and I don't know if I always get upset, what would you expect from us? And that's one that I kind of, besides, money, to have some other answers. Why is it? And I think, like I said, it goes back to their kind of sizing you up too. Like, are you just interested in the money I bring to the table, or are there other ways that you think that I'm a fit? And so that's a good one too, not just saying, well, we'd like money and here's what we do with it and here's our plan and here's our numbers and here's all these things, but why we're really interested in you is because X, and the expertise they bring or the other companies they've worked with or those kind of things. So I'd say those are three questions that maybe in day one we weren't expecting, thinking about, and now we're thinking about a lot. And I think we're at the point where we have answers to all those, but those are three that I think are good to think about if you haven't already.
Excellent, wonderful. So each question which you just gave to us is a double-edged sword. They're asking you something and they're also expecting you to think a little more than the question. Excellent. That's a great piece of advice from you, Maria. Aseem, what's your vision for Webomates in next 2 years or 3 years? And how has been your life in the last 7 months of pandemic?
Vision for the next couple of years, actually, these are interlinked questions because the last 7 months actually ended up creating a scenario that is a little pretty much a land of opportunity for us. We had already started focusing on the United States Air Force and SBIR from the DoD, and we got phase ones, we've got multiple phase twos that we've applied for, we're doing it again. So the net resultant is because I wasn't on the road anywhere near as much, I was able to become my latest master's is in proposal writing. And if you've never done an SBIR, you don't feel my pain. So there is a lot of effort that's needed to do that kind of work. But, March to June, almost every business, unless you were remote retail, right? Amazon, in other words, was sort of like either like this or like this, right? And you just hoped you were here, not here. So we were kind of like here, but we didn't pick up any new accounts. Everybody who was currently doing something went into the kind of a mode, and current customers did exactly that, but continued paying us. So we were quite happy. So, you had almost a quarter where basically commercial business on a worldwide basis went stationary, right? Any incoming orders, you just sat on them. Coming out of it, we suddenly have a new market, which is the DoD. We're talking with like 7 groups in the Air Force. We're talking to the Army now. Commercially in the US, we're starting to pick up steam again. All the contracts that were sort of like in queue are being basically now finalized. And Europe is starting to grow. Internally within the company, where I think the impact, at a business level, it's sort of like, I'm looking at the next couple of years being where I move from the sort of like single-digit growth to potentially double-digit growth years, because I've been, this is a non-COVID story. I'm hiring. I've hired 3 salespeople in the last 2 months, and I'm going on a bit of a spree at this point in time because one of those things you learn at the bottom of the chasm is that, it doesn't really matter what you're building if you don't have a sales force, it doesn't sell. Unless you have a consumer application, and then you need to sell from the perspective of building your website and drawing in traffic, but it's still selling. So we're looking at a significant increase. A lot of our internal focus has been around how do we handle teams that have gone completely remote. Now, we're a native cloud, native AWS, native, that entire shebang that we were, we didn't write a line of code that didn't run in AWS from day one. So for us to transition and become remote, technically, was actually trivial. Everybody stopped going to work and they just continued using, because we didn't really have much lab infrastructure in the office. And for everybody outside of India, they were already working remote. It was kind of like, okay. And when we hear people saying, "Oh my God, have you heard of Zoom?" And we're like, yeah, well, I mean, kind of 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more. It was that kind of a reaction. However, for the teams that were already a little bit, were already remote versus the teams that went from a on-floor premises to a completely remote setting. It was a real adjustment, right? People sitting at home, people, you know, with kids running through the back, over the front, in between, no babysitting, particularly in India. This can be really challenging because all the housework needed to be done. So, and then you had the sort of like, it used to be for everybody on the team that the weekend was something you look forward to. More than 50% of our team didn't want the weekend to come. They were like bored senseless. So it's like we started all these initiatives. We started a sort of like global all hands meeting, which, you know, lots of companies do that. But the question is it entertaining? Is it material? Does it engage the team? So like we had one of those today where we've taken the COVID opportunity to take more than 50% of the team, and they've gotten certifications in AWS, and we've put bonuses up saying, okay, you're bored, you're doing nothing else over the weekends, here, study hard, get certifications, and your career will move forward, and you know it's good for the company too. Last week we had a yoga session done over demos on a worldwide basis, which was kind of interesting. A lot of people admitted that their flexibility had reduced over time and they needed to focus on that. So, you know, doing that kind of stuff, which maybe many, I think, larger companies, non-startups spend a lot of time. I'm not sure they're very good at it. I've worked at some very large companies, but they have these initiatives. And I mean, we're starting to measure calls by, okay, how many people turned Zoom on the call in the all hands meeting? How many people spoke? How many people laughed, right? And the last metric is like the most important. And we've really put a lot of sort of like internal energy into sort of like moving this forward, because otherwise, you know, productivity does a nosedive. Let me go to the hard data. You know, people are unhappy. I mean, it's like, why are you doing this? If, you know, everybody starting from the top is like, oh, it's so bad, it's horrible, I'm going to kill myself, you know? So
Excellent.
That's
So,
yeah, actually been really good.
Yes. So Aseem is a great storyteller. He would keep you hooked to your seats. So what Aseem is saying that it's very important to engage with your people and to make them learn. Constantly, consistently improving is the key. If you invest in yourself, you become better. And Aseem invests a lot in himself and in his team. That's very important for him and to grow. Aseem, one question. You have had the experience of going to investors. How important is IP for investors in the US?
I've had many investors literally tell me that, because we've gotten now a lot of patents, right? 4 so far, I don't know, 2, 3 more filed, and there's another bucket load coming on it, just by the way. The typical reaction I've gotten is, you know what, we really don't value patents. That's sort of like the starting thing. Now, I mostly take that as an opening bid to drive down valuation, because in reality, now there are pros and cons with a patent, right? So, are you as a startup going to prosecute a patent ever? Sure, right after you raise $100 million, you can hire the 20 patent lawyers and they can go after implementing your patents. So the probability of actually prosecuting a patent is fairly low unless you end up becoming Google or, you know, some equivalent company. From a defensive perspective, patents are valuable. And from a valuation perspective, if you can put some credible thought behind why the valuation is there, there is some tendency to listen to it. And of course, there is, you know, from a pure marketing perspective, you walk into someone and say, well, I've patented the AI algorithms that we've been working at. And, you know, that means at least someone outside your organization has actually looked at it, which is the patent examiner, and didn't just go laughing all the way, you know, to wherever and say you're completely, you know, so you've got some degree of validation that there is something truly unique, which is what the patent process is about. So it's impressive. I mean, I walk into DoD meetings and I say, we have 4 patents. They go, huh, okay. You're, okay, that's interesting. Tell us a little bit more. So it's a good sales and marketing. From a valuation perspective, you're going to have to fight for it because it's become the discount phrase in Silicon Valley in particular to just like immediately say, well, we don't believe in patents. Okay, then. So
that's the first step to start negotiating. I mean, if they say that you're going to value it, you're going to ask for more money. So they say, well, we don't care about it. But they do care about it, especially in the US. One of the sessions we were doing, and the panelist was a patent attorney in the US, and she said, investors are looking for granted patents. They're not even happy with just filed patents. They want granted patents. So
even with granted ones, I've had the same reaction. Don't value it. Opening statement. No. But again, it is a negotiating tactic.
Yes, definitely. Yes, we all understand that. Thank you so much for bringing it up, Aseem. Jayendra, so are you launched? Have you launched your product? You're still about to launch. What's your plan?
So we are still in the development phase of our technology. Like I mentioned early on, there are certain resource-heavy directions that we are trying to navigate through right now. So we are a part of Mass Challenge, which is a equity-free early-stage accelerator program. And through this program, we've achieved to connect with industry experts and mentors who are guiding us through these challenges of getting the regulatory pathway or the processes designed to make a headway to commercialization. But to answer that, we've also have a global health initiative where we launched a version of our product. It's a telepathology. So just to step back a bit, and what we exactly do is we're working on digital pathology software. So pathology is one of the most important pillars in medicine, which involves the diagnosis and studies of diseases through body fluids or tissues and organs. And the methods used in this field have not evolved or experienced any significant change over the last 150 years. So as the global population now is aging and cancers are becoming more prevalent, demand for these keen-eyed pathologists who peer down to these tissue slides and examine these biopsy samples and analyze them to find out if the sample is diseased or not. There is a huge rise in their demand, but it still remains unfulfilled. So these pathologists have a very weighty task to examine these lab samples of body tissues to determine if they are cancerous or they are benign. So there are different directions. So we launched a product which supports telepathology, which is we are hosting these digital biopsy specimens, and this makes these specimen analysis borderless, with one hospital able to consult with the pathologist from a completely different region, an expert in the other side of the world completely, to get their expert opinion. So it's a form of telepathology, and we've launched this as a global health initiative from Crosscope amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've received tremendous response. And this free access cloud software that we've provided, we've seen organic growth of more than 3,500 experts using it currently from more than 50 countries. They use it mostly for research and in educational settings, so that they could also, unlike Zoom, they can use their tissue samples and educate their residents and students, as well as communicate with experts around the world, and probably also review their cases remotely while being at home. So this is one product variant that we launched, which is free to access and is live currently.
Excellent. Way to go. Are you coding yourself as well?
So the founders, Ketan, Dr. Ketan Bachwar, and I both have backgrounds in machine learning. So we've coded the algorithm aspect. Ketan, my co-founder, has an engineering and PhD background. So he is the software developer come AI developer. He's the CTO of the company, and I'm managing the business operations and the finances direction.
So you don't work with non-PhDs?
For now, the team is very hot on science. Yes, I agree. But so the core team has background in sciences, also in business, and we also have medical professionals on the team.
Apart,
Sorry, Jayendra, if you're doing the a mass challenge, there's an equivalent accelerator in Europe based in Amsterdam that you should have a look at, which helps you get into the European market. Ping me, I'll introduce you to another medical startup and they really know the details. I'll just facilitate, okay?
Excellent. Thank you, Aseem. I'll make sure to connect.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. The panel is such a giver. We don't extract more out of you. So Jayendra, you have a partner called Kunal. He's also a PhD.
Ketan.
Ketan, and you don't work with non-PhDs. You So apart from capabilities, what else do you look for in a partner?
So Ketan and I, we met in Paris. So we've been friends for long term. And the idea of starting something together comes from our diverse backgrounds. So he has a PhD in mathematics and machine learning, working extensively on developing medical AI softwares particularly. So he was a ex-GE healthcare AI researcher. And I was doing my PhD in a medical setting. I was in a hospital, and we've been friends since last 6 years now. And during the last year of our PhD, we decided that, okay, our backgrounds do have some complementarity, and we could have this direction, which it would be a very hot topic coming in diagnostics in the next few years. And things just clicked, and being friends, that helped us. So there was no dating period required to, just like Maria said, that it's like marriage with investors. It's the same with your co-founders, with your initial founding team members. You have to have that understanding. It is like getting married to your business partner. And I think this is quite crucial to have that level of understanding, that match in frequency, and that segregation of responsibilities early on. And that helps to establish that great team which investors look for and gauge that, yes, this is a successful team and they'll be willing to bet on it.
Excellent, wonderful. So you clearly have a strategy for investment as well. Excellent, wonderful. Get to know. Maria, how serious are you about your IP?
I think it depends on the industry. So for us, we're in educational gaming and software, and so there's not a lot of patents. A lot of it is kind of copyright stuff in terms of the gaming part, because especially you look at games, right? Look at any app store, right? Something comes out and 2 weeks later, there's a rip-off version of it coming out, right? And so a lot of it is about kind of, I would say, quality of the product less than some of the content. I mean, we do have some AI elements and things built in, but it doesn't, for us, make sense to go out and get a patent, because really in ed tech and schools, and when you're looking at for marketing, it's like schools don't really care. If I'm going into an elementary school, they're like, do you have a patent? They don't really care. They're really obsessed with data and efficacy research and that kind of stuff. So for us, it hasn't really made sense. We've had a couple of things that we thought, should we look into it? And it just, when you look at bandwidth as a small company, didn't make sense to us for something like that. But I do think, for us, when I look at our IP, I look at, like I said, a lot of the copyright things, right? The things that are very much ours and someone can't go and take, or if they do, it's very clear, hey, isn't that like that game from 7th Generation Games, which is what you're hoping for and working towards. So for us, it hasn't been so much of a thing. And I always just think about it from our software is, especially because there is a lot of copying in education and gaming both. If we just do a better job, then I'm not concerned.
So a follow-up question is that if you do a better job and the rip-off will come in about 2 weeks, how will you stop that?
Well, so for educational games especially, it's really hard to do good educational games, right? That's why you don't see that many. There's not a clear market leader. If you say, who's the best educational gaming company, there's not really someone that jumps to mind, right? And it's because a lot of the things take a lot of time. It's really easy to do games. We talk about like shooting and, right? Like shoot the right answer, but that doesn't really teach you anything, right? You don't learn like, you get it wrong, you just shoot the next one, you get it wrong. So to build in things like embedded education and resources that steer you right when things are wrong and all of these things, like the parts that we do take a lot of time and a lot of money, which is where the SBI awards and our investors have come in. And so those are the things that are hard to rip off, right? So if I'm going to do, say, a Candy Crush rip off, a puzzle type game, something like that, you can do that. But if you want to build a game that has every audio and video and text function play and be fully bilingual on every single screen, and that routes wrong answers to learning modules that teach those concepts and then routes you back into the game and has all of that similar in art and storyline and concept. That's the part that takes a really long time. So I think it's not a matter of, and that's when one of the questions that you get from investors a lot too is, well, what if someone came in and said they want to do this tomorrow, right? What would you do? What would keep? And I said, well, it would take them probably a year and a half to get up to speed to get to the first one that we did. And by then we're, 6 years in, and now we're another year and a half ahead of them. And then the other thing that we hear a lot is, well, what if somebody, an industry leader came in and wanted to do this? What would stop them from taking over? And I say, well, it would be a lot more cost effective for them to just buy us. So I think that's where it comes in, is you look at, even if it's not a strict IP, this is my thing that I've patented or these kind of things, what is it that stops other people from coming into the market and pushing you aside? And those are the two things that we talk about.
Excellent, wonderful. That's a great piece of advice, Maria. Adding my 2 cents to it, I was in Motorola in Chicago for 4 years as an in-house patent counsel. What I learned there was this: if you are able to add incremental invention, and that incremental feature in the software, in the video game, in the app, if that incremental feature is new and non-obvious, you qualify for a patent. I repeat, if you are just new and non-obvious, your feature is new and non-obvious, you qualify for a patent. In the video game industry also, if you're making apps or a video game, if you're adding a feature in the game which is new and non-obvious, that can qualify for a patent. So although these schools which you sell to perhaps do not care about whether you're patented or not, but tomorrow it definitely gonna help you when you sell out, when you exit, or when looking for more investment. And one more piece of advice: when you're filing patents, investors would force you to file patents or trademarks or copyrights in the company's name. You can, if you can negotiate with them, file the patents in your name. You can license the patent to the company, not assign it to the company. License to the company, and so that you have the IP in your name. You own the IP, and you're licensing it to five people. And that's what I've been learning. So in Photon Legal, we're working with a lot of investors, a lot of startups. Investors are getting, before they're putting their money into a company, they want us to do an IP due diligence. So we understand whether the idea in which they're investing is worth investing or not. So we do a lot of analysis about patents being filed in the technology area, whether this company in which they want to invest can launch the product or not. If this company launch the product, will they infringe certain patents? So we do all the analysis for investors before they put their money into some company. And then from the startup's point of view, before, if they're taking somebody's money, they want to make sure they protect their software's algorithms, because they are able to command a bigger valuation once they go to the investors, if they had the IP with them. That was my 2 cents. Thank you so much, Maria. Aseem, what are your core values in the company?
Well, we're essentially doing something called continuous testing. And this is a little different from, I think, where the core values question's intended. If you want the core internal value, what we've optimized down to is 2 words: continuous learning. There's a lot of stuff that comes out of that you can implement with it. But more and more, we're orienting the organization around a constant learning process, which is surprisingly difficult when you have a cross-cultural multinational team, because the methods of learning are different. And what you're trying to learn is completely different, right? Sales, marketing, dev, test, AWS, it's a completely different sort of areas of focus. So that's really where we've centered around, and I've tried to keep it simple. I've had many organizations where their sort of like core value statement was, a page, a handbook. Could have been as long as your book, Maria. I'm not kidding. And I used to work for Philips. so what does that really mean when you're talking about continuous learning? I've met many middle managers that feel that they've already learned everything they needed to learn. They're done. They won't fit into this organization. They don't last. It's like they come in and they bounce out really fast. And that's actually a conscious choice. We're looking for people that are looking, I've done stunts like this. My HR manager is currently learning how to be a voice talent on video recordings, video blogs that we're putting out. Why? She had an interest. We kind of thought it was kind of cool. We'd like video blogs. I wasn't very happy with what I got with outsourcing. I wanted someone closer inside. For those of you who have a technical background, asking a tester to get AWS certification, a manual tester in particular, is sort of like asking a biomedical researcher to do, take something completely far away. Jayendra, I'm not coming up with a good example, but it's really, really alien to them. But if you live in a cloud world and you don't know what the cloud is, and you can't even deploy an instance, even as a tester, you're handicapping yourself, right? That I would say continuous learning. Just on your interesting riff on IP, one other area that I found it interesting is as we've started scaling up, a lot of what we've been doing, particularly from a selling and reselling perspective, has been partnerships. And this is partnerships. We're partnered with Columbia. Believe it or not, Maria, I was unable to get NYU to give me a hand on AI so far. I've tried, and I'm trying again Monday. This is after studying there. It hasn't ever worked out for me. So having defined IP where we're working on machine learning projects, Jayendra, you'd be interested in this part, has helped me out because I'm going in to do an STTR project where I'm telling Columbia, I've already filed 2 patents. You can't claim any of the IP for this to work for it. And it's a really cheap way to expand your AI pool because as Jayendra will tell you, finding your third AI person, tell me when you manage and wherever it is, give me one, please. I will buy on demand, right? It's like I am searching on a worldwide basis to find AI resources that I can afford, startup, and that are actually material. So from the partnerships with academic institutions and partners, one of our big partners is a company called Tech Mahindra, which is a global IT services company. And again, sort of like specifying this is our IP, right? In which is governed by the mutual NDA and the partnership agreement. Hopefully, will at least give them a pause before they step on us. And they're huge. We're about this big. That kind of a thing. It's an interesting sort of like side take for where you could have some utility in it. But again, it's now we're getting into what's your go-to-market strategy, right? And that changes everything.
Sure. Thank you very much, Aseem. Thank you so much for throwing some light on that. Jayendra, you are looking for investment. So what's your strategy on investment, and is IP a part of it?
Yes. To answer the second question, IP is definitely the part of it because the healthcare industry we are in is super IP intensive. And as a early startup, we have some good traction on the technology development and would love to have that, I'd say, per hand while we make the road to commercialization with our technology. So yes, that is one direction. And in terms of investments, we are looking for, rather than just angel investors who just give us money and let us go and develop our own technology, we're looking actually for partners who have heavily experienced the health tech field, in particularly in regulations as well as compliance. As a healthcare software company, there are different directions. Setting up a quality management system, for example, we are direct task once we get that early investment in. So this is one important direction where software and data security is of prime importance for us. and to set it up. We're looking for folks who have made investments in these similar companies like ours who deal with data as well as work on the cloud.
Excellent, wonderful, good to know. Maria, you have schools and kids who are looking up to you for your games and video games. So they are customers, they are clients, they are fans. Customers come and go, clients stay with you for a little longer. As a lawyer, I can say that. And fans love you. How do you make your customers your fans?
I think part of it is, and I think a lot of things like this, not just schools, right? Like everybody wants to be the person who knows the next big thing. So I think that was really helpful for us early on is we went out and for our first, customers, and we, basically like anything they wanted, any problem they had, and we still really try and be really responsive, but we were really proactive in connecting with them and following up every couple of months, and little things that you might not like, we'd send them a pack of stickers for their classroom, or here's pencils, or here's certificates you can give your kids, right? You've probably been, and so a lot of it, and those are things we've somewhat automated, as we've gone along, but I think that was part of it, was really those first customers, making sure that they became fans, because those are the ones you can call people and you can call people and you can call people. But if you're doing any kind of enterprise level sale, if one, somebody else refers you or they make that contact, but two, you can call and say, all of the schools around you we've worked with, we're working with these different places and we'd love to work with you too. That kind of gets them interested in becoming those customers and those clients. And so I think for us, that's been the big thing, is really, really not only having a good product in the beginning, but really taking care of those early customers so that they become clients, so they become fans. And those are going to be your biggest advocates. And for us, I think that's been a big part of it. And then also just making sure that you do what you promise that you'll do as far as your product. A lot of people promise lots of things, and then when it doesn't deliver, you have lost all of those fans, right? They might really be excited and they go in and they use it, and then it's just not what you promised them. And so for us, I think making sure that it really did produce the outcomes that we said that it would produce, that was a big thing. Once you do that, if you can say, hey, we helped kids improve their math scores by 30% in the amount of time they were using our game, that really does more than any kind of thing else we could do. So I think that's it. And then kind of, like I said, when people see other success from their neighbors or their friends, that's going to make them want to, not only be your customer, your client, but also your fan long-term as you go down the road.
Excellent, wonderful. So what Maria is saying that you have to constantly innovate and constantly connect with your customers and be obsessive about adding value to what you're doing, so that they are constantly engaged with you. Adding the obsession for adding value for your customer is something which can convert your customers into your fans. Thank you so much, Maria, for touching upon that. In this last round, guys, if you wish to, or second last round, in this second last round, if you wish to ask a question to a fellow panelist, you can shoot now.
Or maybe I can jump on directly. This question is for both Maria and Aseem. Both of you have been experienced in SPI grant writing. How was your first time getting into the grant application, and what would be the tips or suggestions that you would give for a fellow entrepreneur trying out his hand at the SPI?
I have lots of thoughts, but I'll keep them as short as possible. So I think we've gotten 7 to date. And the one thing that we've done every time is we promise less in the beginning every time. The first one, we went way overboard in what we said we'd do in our phase 1, and you have to do it, right? Because otherwise, what you promised in your phase 1, if you don't do it, then when you go to apply for your phase 2, you really get docked and they're probably not going to give it to you. So our very first one, I think we promised 1 full game in our phase 1, which looking back now, we do like 2 levels, and we do a lot of testing and we do a lot of things. We not only promised 1 full phase 1, we promised a full phase 1 and an efficacy, which is just in retrospect crazy, but we didn't really think. We thought, we got to get this. We're really excited. We want to get it. And so I say, you don't want to promise not enough, but it's that balance of like, figure out how much you can realistically do with that amount of money, how much you can realistically do in that amount of time, and then justify really well why they should then give you not only give you the phase one, but why it's going to be really good to give you the phase one, and then kind of why they should be already thinking about giving you the phase two. Because I think one thing, and then I know a lot of folks that have applied and not gotten them, say some of the things they get docked for is promising to do too much, saying they're going to do too much in especially a phase one proposal. And it's that very big struggle of saying enough that they give you the money, but not saying too much that they either don't give you the money or that you basically, I don't want to, it's a miracle. It's, when you talk about walking through the fire, it's a miracle our team is still together. I guess that first phase one, got us through it and made sure that we were never going to break up as a team. But I think really being realistic in what you're proposing, and then really focusing on the innovative component, because, there's lots of things, but what is innovative about yours and why is yours different from all of the other proposals that they're getting? Because we all think our things are innovative. We all think our things are special. We all think our things are the best, but why is yours really? It's fine.
Wow, wonderful. Maria can go on.
So we're not quite as accomplished. We've only gotten one phase one, gotten 2 MOUs into phase two. So Maria's far, whichever direction. I guess more like that. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm up from you, but I'm mine. But yeah.
So, you should pick out which institution you're going after. Biomedical, NSF is the most obvious one. The NSF grants, we've applied for an NSF, it's not back yet, but it's the most obvious fit. And I would talk to a few people who've been down that pathway before. The second thing you'll have to decide is whether you want to spend money in terms of at least the first time you're doing a submission and having someone do it for you. We took a very expensive route, and there are alternates there. I'd suggest you talk to both of us specifically for references, and then do your homework. There are lots of people who are willing to help for lots of money, and it becomes formulaic after a while. But having templates and stuff like that really helps if you focus in. We haven't done enough that it's become truly formulaic for us, but it does help. And we had real help and guidance from one organization, which I don't, we spent a fair amount, but it was worth it because, in December when we started this, it's like December, Christmas week, I went to Florida, isolated myself, pre-COVID, and because I dedicated a week where I was at a place by the water, and I was writing my first DoD phase one proposal, and it took about a week of my time. That's with help.
So that was my follow-up question. Did you guys write it by yourself, or you had a dedicated team member who was experienced enough in grant writings? Me as a academic researcher, I have some experience in writing grants. Should I be allowing myself in that direction, spend weeks of times to write it myself at this stage where we are making progress and headways in other directions? That's what I wanted to get out of this question, basically.
Yeah.
It's a percentage probabilities. The fact that you've written academic grants does not necessarily mean you understand NSF lingo. It really boils down to actually I lied. Our first NSF application was rejected in spite of the fact that we had a guide. And there's a immediate do-up where you can resubmit as soon as the first one's rejected. So we spun one around and we took the feedback. They didn't like the fact that we didn't overemphasize the machine learning aspects of what we were doing. And they're like, well, it sounds really good, but you seem to have no idea how to do it. And I'm like, well, no, there was a limited amount of space, right? So we immediately resubmitted, and that one was immediately accepted and moved to the sort of like the second step in the NSF process. So the guide helped. But it's costly, right? And so you kind of got to make up your mind on where you want to go. And if you don't mind submitting multiple times, you'll learn it eventually. And, again, you can, asking for favors is always easy. Hey, could you review this for me? Have you ever done this before? That kind of stuff will help. So those would be sort of like the two pieces that I would suggest there may be other agencies. I'm not a biomedical guy. Maria, maybe you know.
Well, I would say what I would do is I would call the agency you're most interested in, right? So this happened to us. The very first grant we did, we thought we'd apply to the Department of Ed. That would make sense, educational games. So we call the project manager, always call them and always listen between the lines, right?
Mhm.
And they said, well, I don't know if this is quite an interest for what we'd be doing. I don't know if it's a fit for where we're looking, but you should really look at the Department of Agriculture. And we thought, Department of Agriculture, so we're talking about rural communities, and they have a community development pillar as one of their things, and you should look at them. And so instead of trying to say, well, I think, we were like, all right, thank you so much, goodbye, hung up the phone, looked up USDA, found their pillar, talked to their person. They said, we would love you to submit, and we are looking for awards. And they aren't going to tell you exactly, but they'll tell you if they don't think you should submit, or I'm not sure. We always joke internally is that I'm not sure if the secretary's interested in that kind of topic, or the secretary would be very interested in. And so we went to USDA, and we've ended up getting 6 awards, 3 phase 1s and 3 phase 2s from them. So it's listening between those lines of what it is. And sometimes people get so caught up. They're like, oh, but this is, no, if they say, I don't know if it'd be a fit for us, but it'd be a fit for, run that way, say thank you very much. And so that's one thing that we really learned. And the program managers try to get to them early, because if you're trying to get to them in the end, that you're getting, they're slammed, but they will give you really good feedback. And so that's one thing I was going to add when he was talking about talking to people is, and they'll do it for free. So, getting in front of them and listening to the directions that they give you, or if you're saying, I'm thinking of going this way or that way, they can't promise what's funded. They can't do anything, but they might say, well, I'd be interested in option A. I think that'd be good. Then listen to those things. I take notes all the time, and we have one we're putting in, and there was a word that the guy kept saying over and over, and I'm like, that will be in the proposal several times. So those are the kind of things the little things that make a big difference.
Absolutely. Terrific answer, both of you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. We had just about 2 minutes, and I'll wrap up. We have learned a lot from this panel, how to get grants, US grants from Maria, IP, video games, funding, investment, culture, learning, continuous learning, working just with PhDs. We'll learn a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, guys. I think this session is going to be fabulous. We're going to dissect this into small pieces and bits, and send this across on different channels. People can consume whatever they want to consume. Thanks again for being such a giver. You guys, all 3 of you did not shy away from sharing your knowledge, sharing your success keys, and your learnings, your failures, your pivoting, your experiences. Was such a wonderful thing that we did today. The world can use this today. The world can use knowledge today. People are struggling at the moment, and I'm 100% sure a lot of people can use what you gave out today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Have a fantastic evening.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.